Hey runners, what's going on? It's Hey Coach Ryan, episode 21. I'm Coach Ryan Knapp. Thanks so much for tuning in as always. Friday here in Boston, Snowmageddon coming to the East Coast, not to Boston unfortunately, so my Dion snowshoes will have to sit and pout in the closet for one more weekend. But for those of you down in the East Coast, run safe, be safe outside, watch out for plows, that sort of stuff. Wear reflective gear. Everyone just stay injury free and stay healthy this weekend. So today's question on episode 21 is from Chandy. Chandy is the reason that I lack hair on this general part of my head. Jokingly enough, some of it's actually very true. Chandy just gives me a hard time about a lot of stuff, but she's a really fun athlete to coach and absolutely has a heart of gold. And Chandy asks a very good question about quantity versus quality. I'm going to paraphrase. She has a very long question. I'm going to paraphrase it so we can get rolling. So she asks what I think about quantity versus quality. And she asks specifically because she's training for more half marathons now and shorter stuff than she was when she was doing the ultra stuff before. And she gives an example specifically of, say she has a 2-hour run. Let's say she can run for 90 minutes at good form at what is a good pace for her. And then her form starts to fall apart and she has to slow down her pace. She says, to me, that means my workout is over as I'm a road runner and I'm training to run a fast half marathon. If I was training to run a 50, I would fight through it basically and complete the workout, as an ultra is more about time on the feet. So more about the quantity of the workout and less about that quality. She says, is she totally off here? It's a good question and one that comes with that specific example. So I want to address that specific example as if it was the workout in question, and I'm going to use that to be able to explain my thoughts on quantity versus quality. So let's talk about quantity versus quality first in terms of larger workouts, and I can define those how I usually define them. So quantity workouts for me are basically workouts where you go out and you're completing a certain time or a certain distance, generally at an easy conversational pace, even kind of fartlek stuff or progression sorts of things. So you're going out for an hour easy run. That's a quantity run for me. That's really focused on building up the mileage. A quality run would basically be anything else. So we can look at not fartleks. Fartleks could be in there. You're looking at hill work and intervals and steady state stuff and tempo and track work, VO2 max work. Those sorts of quality workouts where the workout is more in depth. So you're doing 4x400 meters at half marathon pace with a 200-meter recovery in the middle. So that's more of like a quality workout. So both of those, quantity and quality, have a place in our training programs. We're generally doing more quantity. We are building the quantity, building the miles, and building the resistance to running and the strength in running. And then those quality workouts are giving our body a different stimulus based on what races we're training for and based where we are in the training cycle. So that's how those two words interact with regards to the larger training cycle. But in this example, all right, there we go. Okay, so we're just gonna, this is obviously time, okay? So a half hour, an hour, 1:30, 2 hours, okay? So this is the workout in question that we're working with. So if I had a runner that had this issue where they were running for 90 minutes, so this is just a pace we're gonna make up. So they're running for 90 minutes and then they hit 90 and then things start to happen. They start to feel fatigued. They start to feel like their form is going to crap. And if this is pace, so this is faster and this is slower, they start to run slower as they get closer to the workout. But right here is kind of like I have a red marker or a blue marker, that'd be easier. So right here is kind of our inflection point, right? Where we have this issue, the right will probably be easier. There we go, where we have this issue happening right here, okay? So if I have a runner that had a workout like this, or that had a succession of workouts where they were having an issue at this point, what I first do as a coach is I'm not looking at necessarily what's going on right here, but I need to look at this whole 90 minutes. And what I'm generally going to look at is what pace are they running, what heart rate is that producing, or what effort is that producing, either asking them subjectively or looking at their heart rate data, and seeing if there's things that we can change that can make this workout better. My guess is in this hypothetical case that Chandy puts out, after 90 minutes, if you start consistently feeling bad, then we've went out at a pace that's not sustainable for 2 hours. Because basically what we could do okay, is we can make charts and we could say, let's say 5K, 10K, 13.1, 26.2, okay? We can make a chart that's really simple. And we can basically say for our 5K pace, it's gonna be 6:30. For our 10K pace, it's 7:45, same like 7:55, and then, I don't know, 9 minutes, okay? I'm just making up paces. But basically, we can make a pace chart that would give us what we can basically go out and run at right now. So if we were gonna run a 5K, we'd run 6:30 pace. If we're gonna run 10K, 7:45, and so on. So if I'm looking at this, and the addition to that is that produces a specific heart rate, okay? So this heart rate's gonna be much higher, and then this heart rate's gonna be much lower when you just look at those on a spectrum. And again, we've talked in previous episodes that you can, whatever pace you run, that produces a heart rate. And that heart rate is your body's response to the stimulus you're giving it. And that's basically telling you, okay, how hard am I working with regards to what my body's maximum is, and then what regards is to what that lactate threshold is. So I would look at this run as a coach. Let's just say very simply, it's an 8-minute mile pace. Okay, it's nice and easy. So she's running this 8-minute mile pace. She hits 90 minutes and she starts to drop off. So as a coach, I'm going to look back at this effort and say, that 8-minute mile pace for 2 hours isn't sustainable. It's not in this wheelhouse that she can sustain that pace for 2 hours. Now, it could come from two ways. The pace could drop off because cardiovascularly she's not fit enough, so her fitness can't sustain that. Or also it could be form and strength in a way where you get to this point and then your form starts to break down. You still feel okay, but all of a sudden you start, you start feeling your hips drop and you start feeling weak, and you kind of do that thing where you sit back in your butt, and that happens there. So regardless, there's a couple different things you can do. The first thing is, if this happened in a workout, I would slow this pace. So now I would look at maybe having the person going out and let's do a 9-minute mile, or let's do an 8:30. And if you lower that to 8:30, then what you might see is now you can go all the way to 2 hours. And you might see a little fatigue right here where it starts to drop off. But you say, okay, so now we know an 8:30 pace is sustainable for that amount of time. So this pace just produced a heart rate and an effort that was too hard for our body to maintain for 2 hours. It was just out of our limit for that time frame. The other thing that you can do is, if this pace, if 8 minutes a mile was important for some reason, you had to run 2 hours, you had a test where you had to run a 2-hour workout at an 8-minute mile pace. What you can do to make that, to stretch that out here, is you could put in interval breaks in the middle and let yourself be able to run that whole pace with those interval breaks, and then you'll be able to stretch out for that 2 hours. So you could run 30 minutes, 5-minute easy run, 30 minutes, 5-minute easy run, 30 minutes, 5-minute easy run, 30 minutes, you're done. And then what you do is you can start to slow this down. So from 5 minutes to 3 minutes to 2 minutes, then you take out one, so you only have one break in the middle at an hour, and then you essentially get rid of that, and you get rid of that, and now you've run 2 hours at an 8-minute mile pace. But you do this over time. So you would complete 4 by 30 minutes, and then you would look at either taking out an interval, removing an interval, or subtracting that time. And that's how you can get high quality work without running sustained, without making it sustained the whole time. So you can do this for like half marathon stuff. So you might have someone run 3 by 3 miles at half marathon pace with a 2-minute, a 2-minute like easier run interval in the middle, and essentially, you're getting 9 half marathon pace. So essentially, you're getting 9 half marathon pace miles out of that, instead of just sending them out and saying you're going to do 9 miles at half marathon pace. For me, if you're going into a pace that's harder, or you're trying to really set a PR or increase, doing this sort of workout is going to let your body adjust to that a little bit better than it is saying, okay, you're going to go out and just knock off 9 miles at half marathon pace. And this is also how you build up to the ability to do that. Whereas once you got comfortable with this, 1 or 2 times, then you can say, I'm going to knock off the interval and I'm going to do that. Or you would lower the interval and say, I'm going to do, 4 by 1 and then 5 by 1, and then you could go up to 9. So you can change that interval as you want. So if you notice a point where you're starting to have these issues, look at it 2 ways. One is drop down the pace that you're running and extend it out. That's probably going to work. Or 2 is, if you have to run that pace, break it up with some intervals to extend out your workout, and then look to change those intervals and remove those intervals as you become more fit. And then you're going to be able to keep the quantity in the workout, the time, but you're also going to be able to keep the quality. So that's how I would address Chandy's issue. As I was just talking, I remembered, and I have to find the podcast. I listened to it when I lived out in Colorado. I think it was a Ben Greenfield fitness podcast, and it was interesting. And I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but this is an interesting way to end this episode. But it was a podcast where a guy was coaching swimmers, and his whole thing was, if you can't do the movement exactly correct until. Okay, so we took a swimmer and he was trying to train this guy, I think it was for the Olympics. And his training was, you would do everything with perfect form. And once you stopped being able to have perfect form, the workout was over. So he went from the guy, I think it was the butterfly he was doing. And he would do 5 meters and the guy's form would fall apart and he'd say, we're done. And then he'd do 6.5 meters and the guy's form would fall apart and he'd be done. And you see where I'm going with this. He'd do 7, he'd do 10, he'd do 15. And eventually it was 100 meter, I think it was 100 meter butterfly. And he got to 78 meters or 80 meters before he had his big trial. And the guy was insanely good. And then he got to 80 meters and he just kind of fell apart and didn't end up placing or whatever. But the whole coach, I have to find this podcast now. It's good to, it's interesting to bring this up, but the coach's whole philosophy was that you should only train as much as you can maintain proper form, and then you're done. So you want to do that, and by slowing the pace, you can maintain proper form at that pace, and then by adding the interval, you can maintain proper form at that pace across the whole time. So it was a really good question, Chandy, and I hope that was an in-depth answer with regards specifically to your situation and to your scenario that you gave me. So that's episode 21 out. If you guys have any questions or thoughts, make sure to leave them in the comments. If you have any questions you want me to answer, feel free to send me a message. Use the hashtag HeyCoachRyan. I'll shoot a video. We've got some in the hopper still, so we're going to get those out here in the next couple of days. But again, I love doing these, so make sure to leave some comments and get back to me with your questions. So thanks so much for tuning in here, episode 21. Stay safe there on the East Coast, and we'll be back next week with episode 22. Thanks as always for watching.